Thank you for coming this afternoon. I'd like to keep these consultations as informal as possible. You are the second university campus that we've been to. This morning was the first one. We went to Fiji National University, Lautoka Campus. Prior to that, of course, we've been doing having a lot of public consultations, also with high schools. So yesterday, for example, we were in the Ra district, Tavua, and then in the evening at Natambua High School, where we met with the private sector. Now, the process is that we go around having these consultations, we get the input from members of the public. The permanent secretary who's here, she's already had one round of consultations with the permanent secretaries of the other ministries. So they sit across the table, they present their budget, and she goes through it with a fine-tooth comb. And then next week again, I sit together with her this time, and then we sit across the table with the ministers from the other ministries together with their permanent secretaries. We crunch the figures, we look at their priorities, whether it fits in with government's policy. And then, as announced yesterday, we will be announcing the budget on the 29th of June in the evening. Last year, we started this practice that we will be now announcing the budget in the evening, so you can all sit at home, have your meal, and will hear me stand up in Parliament or watch me in TV and announce the budget. Because the whole idea is generally, previously, budgets used to be delivered during the day. You'd be having a lecture, so you don't actually get to hear it. You get to read about it in the newspapers or whatever. Some newspapers obviously don't do a very good coverage of it. Some of them have a very skewed analysis of it. So it's better to hear from the horse's mouth. Now, once the budget is presented, then by law, we have to wait at least a week before Parliament actually then debates the budget. So when the Parliament debates the budget, then we go through the budget and then the budget gets approved. Now, I'm very uncomfortable with that. There are other people recording it, you can get it off them. Yeah? So they're recording it, you can get it off them. It's just that it's a bit distracting. Once the Parliament then sort of debates the budget, it gets approved, then the budget actually gets into effect from the 1st of August. Because our financial year now begins on the 1st of August. 1st of August till the 31st of July the following year. So nothing gets actually put into practice on the 29th of June. The only thing that actually takes effect is if we are going to increase or decrease any tariff rates. So for example, normally we put up the tariff or the duty on cigarettes and alcohol. That comes into effect after midnight of that night that I made the announcement. So you be aware, those of you who cigarettes, hopefully many of you don't smoke cigarettes, that if it actually does go up, then that new tariff or excise rate becomes applicable from midnight the next day, even though the budget has not been passed. Now, what we actually do with the format, I do a very short presentation on some of the aspects of the economy, what is government doing, what is the priorities, but more so the actual figures, the statistics that has been independently collated by the Reserve Bank of Fiji to give you a snapshot as to where we are. It also will help you understand some of the terminologies that you may hear or you may not necessarily understand. So for example, why do we need foreign reserves? What's the impact of foreign reserves? And for example, what is debt to GDP ratio and all those sorts of things. So at least when we do talk about it, you have an understanding. And also hopefully it'll give you some food for thought. When we open up the floor, you can ask questions. You can make comments. I just came back from, like I said, from the FNU campus in Lautoka. A lot of the issues that were raised by the students there was about the university campus itself. Some people weren't happy with the accommodation. Some people weren't happy with the meals. Some people weren't happy with the quality of the meals. Some people weren't happy with the quantity of the meals that was given to them. So there's a lot of issues talking about, for example, access to science labs. There are other issues that were also raised, and I can talk about that later on. But please relax, chill out, and this is just going to be an interactive session, and so we can hear from you also. The reason why we also have reached out to you today, ladies and gentlemen, in Fiji, 69.4% of the entire population is below the age of 40. You are in the majority, I'm in the minority because I'm over 40. So our belief is that we need to tap into the youth of the country, the young people of the country, because you are in the majority and you need to be able to have an input into the future direction of the country. You will, of course, become very soon leaders in your own right. Leadership is not only about being in parliament, it's also about how you interact in your home, where you live, your business, if you own a business, or where your employer's environment, whatever the case may be. So this is why we're actually talking to you and getting to hear from you. So let's start off with the first slide. Economic growth. Economic growth, Fiji's been growing consecutively now for 7 years. It's actually unprecedented. Well, actually, it's only happened one other time in Fiji's post-independent history, where we had 7 years of straight growth. Why is economic growth essential? When the economy grows, it means there's a lot of robustness within the economy. It actually creates jobs. It means that people have access to money. As a government, our job is also not just to ensure economic growth, but we also have to ensure that the economic growth is not unequal. In some countries, as you have seen, you can have economic growth, but the beneficiaries of that growth may be a handful of people. We need to ensure that that growth rate is spread out a lot better. In Fiji, I'm glad to say, recently was assessed to be only one of the 5 countries in the entire Asia-Pacific region where inequality actually has dropped. Now, post-2016, as you can see over here, see we had Cyclone Mick, we went into negative growth. Generally, whenever you have a big cyclone, your growth rate goes into negativity or gets very dampened or slows down. Notwithstanding the fact we had Cyclone Winston here, Cyclone Winston, we don't like cyclones, of course. Cyclones kills people, it causes you distress. It also is extremely expensive. Cyclone Winston wiped off $1.4 billion worth value of our GDP. That's a lot of money. Our GDP is worth about 10 billion Fijian dollars. 1.4 is approximately about 3 billion, which is about a third of our GDP. Notwithstanding that, despite that, our growth rate is still at 2%. We're projected to grow again in those years to come, so which is good news for you. Of course, we like this growth rate graphs to be even higher. Next slide, please. What are the areas that actually contribute to economic growth in Fiji? You can see in the primary industry, agriculture contributes about 0.31. Fisheries is 0.02, very low. Forestry is even lower, 0.01. What that indicates is that those sectors aren't necessarily doing well, but it also means there's a lot more opportunity there. And our job is obviously to try and tap in and harness those opportunities. Manufacturing is quite large. We manufacture quite a few things in Fiji now. We make sewage pipes, we make biscuits, we make flour, we make all sorts of things. This also captures the manufacture of sugar. Not the production of sugar cane, but the production of sugar. Construction is very good. Construction is, of course, 0.33. We like construction because construction creates jobs. Whenever there's construction, if you're going to build this hall, you need somebody to come and dig the foundation. You need somebody to bind the steel. You need somebody to pour the concrete. You need somebody to lay the bricks. You need somebody to do the plaster, somebody to do the electrical work, somebody to do the painting. Whole shebang, a whole raft of people are used. So when construction actually is carried out, a lot more people get money in their pockets, a whole range of people. Then they go out and spend that money. So construction has a multiplier effect. And these figures are as at October 2016, immediately after Cyclone Winston. Winston actually took place in February. So I would venture to say that construction now is a lot higher than what it was as of October last year. The services sector, of course, the financial sector, the transport sector, and the wholesale and retail was significant in the services sector. We believe that Fiji has the opportunity to have high levels of employment engagement in the services sector. How many of you have mobile phones? Please put up your hands. A lot of you. I'm sure some of you have not put up your hands. We in Fiji today have more SIM cards in operation than actual people. I know some of you have 2 SIM cards. Some of you have it for right reasons, some of you have it for the wrong reasons, whatever the case may be. But what that means also, given the fact that we have 500,000 smartphones in Fiji in use. We reduced the duty of smartphones, made it zero-rated duty a few years ago, so people can get access to smartphones. Why do we like people using smartphones? It's because you can get access to broadband internet. I know many of you have Facebook pages or Vibers and what have you. So that means that the technological uptake in Fiji is quite significant, in particular with the young people. What that means is that Fiji has the opportunity to develop things like call centers, back-end processing. We are precisely doing that. We're actually looking at a particular site here in Warrambitia to develop such a site to get more jobs in that area. So data centers, back-end processing is very, very good for us, and we believe a lot of opportunities. Just to tell you a very short story, a South African company set up a call center in Fiji a few years ago, and I remember talking to them, and I said, you know, how come you want to come to Fiji? So there are apparently two things they said they found attractive about Fiji, apart from the fact that the cost rate of the internet and all of that must be attractive. We actually subsidized them. So we subsidized them. Every single person they hired, whatever salary they paid them, we actually subsidized up to a third of that salary every year to them, so we could encourage them to be in Fiji. These are the kind of things we do behind the scenes. But anyway, the reason why they came to Fiji, they said, firstly, we were in the right time zone. We're exactly 12 hours behind Greenwich Mean Time. So it fits in well, apparently, with Europe and various other countries. The second thing, which I did not know about, was that apparently, we Fijians, we have neutral accents. When they go and set up a call center in India or Philippines, they spend millions of dollars trying to get those people to change their accent so some American who will dial up can actually understand them. And apparently our accents are neutral enough so that they don't actually have to spend that much money. So when somebody calls from Melbourne asking about their insurance claim and you answer the phone in Fiji, they'll be actually able to understand you. Whereas if you have a bit of a accent, they may not be able to understand, so you need to actually change those accents. Next slide, please. Now, what are the things that the Reserve Bank of Fiji looks at to show that investment is increasing? So they look at things like the value of building permits. This is as of September last year, went up by 12.7%. Obviously, when people apply for building permits, that means they're all going to build, which means to show that there is confidence. That means there'll be construction. The value of work in place, work already started, went up by 10.5. Domestic cement sales. People don't buy cement to keep it in their house, they buy it to build things. That goes to show there's confidence. Imports of investment goods, this is things like machinery, etc. Now those people are expanding their factories and what have you. Government capex. Capex is capital expenditure of government, went up by 7.8%. These are the areas in which there was downward trend. New investment lending, lending for real estate, and lending for building and construction went down by 1%. Consumption indicators. New vehicle registration went up by 27.5%. I'm sure many of you are commenting there are a lot more cars on the roads in Fiji now. You have traffic jams between Nandi and Lautoka. You have even bigger traffic jams between Nasinu and Suva. Some people in the morning time, it takes them about more than an hour to actually get to Suva. It's because more people are buying cars. Second-hand vehicle registration went up by 7.8%. In Fiji, of course, people like to buy cars to show that they're doing well. People very proudly say, oh, my son is doing well or my daughter is doing well. They bought their own car. So when people do well, they don't no longer want to catch the bus. They want to go in their own car. And that's also an issue we have to deal with. An issue we have to recognize could become problematic in about 4 or 5 years' time. Many countries have to deal with that too. So that's something we can talk about later. New lending to wholesale retail trade went up. Imports of consumption goods went up. Watches, perfume, deodorant, whatever you like to buy, clothes, these are all consumption goods. So when the consumption goods goes up, that means people are spending money. I went to the new Tapu store in Lautoka, and they were telling me that people are buying salwar kameezes and saris and paying $1,500, $1,000. There's a lot of sales. They're actually quite surprised that people are spending that much money. So these are the kind of indicators that take place. And PAYE collection went up. PAYE is the tax you pay when you work. Of course, you don't pay any taxes now if you earn less than $16,000 a year. If you pay more than $16,000, you pay taxes. which is pay as you earn. That's what PAYE means. That went up. What does that mean? It means more people are either employed or the salaries have gone up. That's why more taxes are being paid. New job advertisements went up by 15.1%. Personal remittances. We have a lot of rugby players playing in France, Japan, various other places. We have we have people working as security guards in the Middle East. We have caregivers in the west coast of North America. You have your friends and relatives living in Australia and New Zealand. They send you money. This is basically money being sent from overseas to people in Fiji. It's the second highest foreign reserve earner for us after tourism. That went up by 5%. Variable, we actually saw an increase in VAT collections because even though VAT went down from 15% to 9%, because they are spending more, so the collection of VAT has increased. New lending to private individuals went down by 4.7%. This is just to show you. You can see the comparison. The dark blue is new vehicles. The light blue is the second-hand vehicles. 2005, there were 6,088 second-hand new vehicles registered. By comparison, 2016 was 10,000. 3,300 new vehicles. By comparison, nearly 5,000 in 2016. Quite significantly high. You can record it. Just kidding. Now you can see obviously a spike here is moved up. The reason being, of course, is because we zero-rated duty on hybrid vehicles. We also brought down the duty on vehicles less than 2,500 cc. If you wanted to buy a bigger vehicle, more than 2,500 cc, we actually put additional duty and additional amount on it. Because the richer you are, the more you should pay. That's the general. So if you go and buy a 3,000 cc BMW, we charge you on top of the duty of 32%, you have to pay another $20,000 more. So we can give the people low income duty-free or less duty. So that's how what we call a progressive taxation system. Retail sales, this basically just captures, the RBF captures the sales, in the shops. You can see how since 2007, sales has been increasing every year. Average growth rate has been about 7.1%. Inflation, this actually measures the price of goods and services essentially. As you can see from 2014, the inflation rate has been around about 2% or below 2%. But over here there's a spike. TC Winston. This is why also we don't like cyclones. A bundle of beans costs $5. Those of you buy beans, a small bunch of bananas in Suva used to cost $20 after Winston, because many banana trees went down. Yangona still costs $110 a kilo in some places, but some people still drink it at the same rate. The fact of the matter is that contributes to inflation. So as we get more, now beans, obviously the price is stabilized to around about $2. Bananas now, the same bananas to buy, my elder son likes bananas, I used to buy it for $20. Less frequently, but now I pay about $7 for the same bundle. So it's come down. You can see there's a downward trend in inflation, which is caused by Winston. It's coming down. It's at 4.1% at the moment. Foreign reserves. A lot of people don't know about this, but as I mentioned to you earlier, like this young man, he's wearing a watch. This watch is not made in Fiji. He's got this bag, it's not made in Fiji. He's got this phone that's not made in Fiji. He's probably got hair gel that's not made in Fiji. He's got this shirt. Even the shirt may be sewn in Fiji, the fabric comes from overseas. The shoes he's wearing is probably not made in Fiji. The socks he's wearing, I don't want to go down the list. Everything is made offshore, majority of it. Now obviously, we have to trade in the currency from which these goods come from. We buy in Japanese yen, we pay in US dollars, we need Singapore dollars. All the fuel needs in Fiji comes from Singapore. All the fuel companies, they buy the fuel from Singapore. We spend about $1 billion a year buying fuel. So you need Singapore dollars to trade in. You need Australian dollars, you need New Zealand dollars. So, how well a country is doing is dependent on your level or indication is the level of foreign reserves. International benchmark shows that you should have at least, this is the number of months, you should have at least 4 months worth of foreign reserves to be able to trade. 2005, we had $549 million in foreign reserves, which was at about 2.3 months worth of reserves to be able to trade for 2.3 months. Today, we have a record $2.16 billion. We've never had $2.1 billion in foreign reserves, which is about 5.8 months worth of trading that we can do. So we're in a comfortable position. That also has an impact on when we go and negotiate loans. They look at how well you're doing. If your foreign reserves are good, then they think that you're a healthy country. You're able to negotiate better interest rates. When Fiji Airways, for example, goes and buys 3 brand new A330s, and when they're negotiating with foreign suppliers of finance, they look at things like this to see how well the country is doing. Will this company be able to make their repayments? Will the Reserve Bank of Fiji stop them from taking money out? Because if your foreign reserves are low, they'll know that people will try and control it a lot more. When the foreign reserves are higher, they know you're in a comfortable position. Now, fiscal deficit. What is fiscal deficit? It basically means that you are spending more than what you are earning or what you have. All governments in Fiji, from the Ratumara government days right up till today, all governments have run a deficit. We are a developing country. We've had, I think, only about 2 or 3 periods in our history or years where we've had a surplus. You see there's a surplus here. That does not necessarily mean that we made lots of money. It could also mean that there was underspending. Sometimes when you budget and you may not spend all the money, you don't actually, it means you spend less, so therefore you may have a surplus. And I'll actually go on to some other things. So obviously from one perspective, the longer the line, the worse it is. The shorter the line, the better it is. The zero is there, that's of course, if you achieve that, that's balanced budget. If you go above that, that's a surplus budget. But the reality is that we have to spend. We're a developing country, we're a former colonial country. Many countries that were colonized did not have much infrastructure built into those countries. So we have to play catch up. We have to tar seal our roads, we have to build electricity, water, etc. But the whole idea is to manage it, not get completely out of whack, to have a balanced approach to it. We have a policy to try and reduce these lines into manageable deficits. As you can see that we had a cyclone there too, and that went up, then we were going down, then Winston took place. So as a result of Winston, we are now spending almost $220 million that we did not anticipate spending, of which nearly $180 million now is being used to build schools. Over 225 schools got damaged. 98% of all those buildings of schools that we are repairing or fixing up or building from scratch did not even have an architectural plan or an engineering plan. So now every single building that we are rebuilding actually has that. So next time, God forbid, it gets blown away, we know exactly what material was used. We know exactly what was damaged. If Winston did not take place, this line would have been sitting somewhere over there. Total revenue. Government of course has to make money. We have to run government like a business. Because if we don't make money, we have to borrow more money. In 2004, government made $1.1 billion. Today we make $3.1 billion. We've almost tripled government revenue. And that is by prudent management of our money and also being creative in respect of how we generate more revenue. One of the ways we're doing, of course, as you know, that we reduced taxation in Fiji. If you earned before more than $8,600, you had to pay tax of 15%. And progressively it went up to about 33%. Today you don't pay any taxes until you earn $16,000 or more. And the rate starts at 7%. But at the same time, we reduce corporate taxation. Corporate rate has come down to 20%. We know that there's a lot of people who have and continue to steal from the system. They keep 2 books, some business houses. One for FIRCA, one for themselves. One for themselves shows the true records. The FIRCA one shows the false records. So they pay less tax. But of course, when you reduce the tax rate, people think, well, it's not worth it doing it, you might as well pay it, it's only 20%. So you increase your compliance. We've also tightened laws. We're going after people who are chorrowing from the system, as they say. So we have increased revenue also. We've also, as you know, brought about VAT in a number of other areas that has helped increase taxation and departure tax, etc. So next slide will show you what are the areas that we make money from. Direct taxes. This is corporate tax. Individuals who earn money when they pay tax, that's that money there. We have value-added tax. This is VAT. Contributes about 30%. Customs contributes 21%. We believe this can be higher. There's still a lot of businesses that actually steal from the system. So they may bring in $10 million worth of goods, they'll declare it as 2 million. So they pay, for example, if the duty is 10%, they'll pay only 10% on 2 million. If they get caught, they say, oh, sorry, and they pay it on the 10 million. So we've made the law stringent, we're going after them, we're getting penalty rates, and hopefully we'll be prosecuting people very soon on that. The other areas that contributes to the revenue, of course, is fees and charges, stamp duty, departure tax. Any person leaving Fiji, including tourists, because they come, they have to leave, they pay $200 departure tax. So that, of course, has contributed about 5% water resource tax, service turnover tax. Now, what we've done here for you is what generally some people call the services, the social services sector. In particular, with social protection, access to justice, education, health, and infrastructure, we put them together to show you how much of the money is actually been spent in those areas. So 2004, for example, of all those areas put together, the total spend was $1.3 billion. Today, it's about $3.6 billion. And infrastructure, as you know, is about roads, bridges, and jetties. Now, you've seen the four-laning road out of Nandi Airport, Soso, all the way to Matintar and Namaka and all those places. What is one thing you notice that is different apart from the four-laning of the roads? Just a quick question so you can see if you're awake or not. What's different? If you guess the right price, we give you a bottle of water. Take a guess. You don't see any overhead wires. There's no electrical cables. There's no telecom cables. It's all underground. What we are doing is we are building what you call resilience in your infrastructure. When we had Cyclone Winston, 6,000 kilometers of electrical cables went down. Now, we put them back up. God forbid we have another cyclone next year, or this one coming, hopefully it'll go away. It can come down again, we put it back up again. Come down again, put it back up again. It costs money. So in the long run, it's better to put it underground. If it's underground, it can't get blown down. Same thing with the telecom wires. The other thing that was very common in Fiji, it still is, because we still have those roads. When you have a road, they used to put the water pipes underneath the road. So when there's a water leak, the ground gets soft, the trucks go on the road, you drive on the road on your buses, on your cars, and the roads get softer, and they go, oh, there's many potholes. Then they say, oh, there's a leak, we think. So you dig up the road, fix up the pipe, but leave the hole in the ground, in the road. It's not smart building. So what we've done with the roads, four-laning of the roads, we've taken out all the pipes, we've taken out all the cables, some places may cross, and put it on the side. There's a water leak, you fix up the leak on the side, no need to dig up the road. These are the kind of very basic things that are being done that should have been done years ago, but those things cost money. That's where infrastructure development goes into, including, of course, electricity. We are now putting electrical cables all around Vitilevu, which should have been done, of course, decades ago. Health, we are spending money, but I'll tell you the biggest problem with health. We don't have enough doctors, enough graduates. I don't know how many of you are doing medicine. Those of you who are doing MBBS, it doesn't mean once they finish it and they become a doctor that they can become a heart surgeon overnight. It takes 10, 15 years. So you require investment in your human resources. Why do you think we are doing TELS? Why do you think we are doing toppers? Because you people are the future. If you get your certificates, if you get your degrees, you'll be able to contribute to the country. Then we'll become even stronger. We take advantage of the economic growth that we have, because we should not rest on our laurels. Just because we've got economic growth, it can very quickly come down if we don't have the right people in the right places doing the right things. So the health issue is about logistics. We have a huge issue with logistics and also the specialists. Ordinary Fijians should not have to travel all the way from Lautoka to Suva, or from Lambasa to Suva, or from Suva to Lautoka to get access to certain services. We should have ear, nose and throat specialists. We should have other specialists located throughout Fiji. And if we do get these specialists, those of you who will become doctors, you can also train under them. And that's how you build the local capacity also. The other issue, of course, education. Funding for education has increased quite phenomenally. In this year's budget, education is getting about 5.5 billion, they're getting $550 million, about $500 million. But of course, that amount will need to increase because there are more people who will be joining universities. It will reach a stage, those of you who may be in the third year of your degree and have got TELS, you may finish next year. But there's other first and second year students who are still coming up the ranks, and there'll be more people coming through the ranks. So we will see, as I'll show you later, we expect that to increase quite significantly. Also, we've had, of course, free education in high schools. Just very quickly, before I finish on education, I've had so many people who've said to me two things. One of them, we wish we had free education in high school in my time, at least I would have finished high school. Or, I did not get to high school because my parents decided that I was a girl, I'll get married off in any case, so my brother should go to school. People used to make those decisions. If you have 5 or 6 kids in the family, the parents could not afford to pay everybody's school fees up front in the beginning of the year. That's number one. Number two, the other comment that I've got quite commonly is, I used to come, at least third in my class. I could have gone to university, but my parents could not afford to send me to university. So I had to go and look for work. So today, I would have been qualified, I would have had a degree or whatever. In fact, I had a couple of people who said, I used to come first all the time. Today I'm a mechanic. I could not find any work. My father could not afford to send me to school. So I had to go and look for work. He said I could have done medicine. So there are many stories like that. But it's very important to understand what we are doing in respect of education. Access to justice, legal aid. Legal aid, essentially, ladies and gentlemen, is the largest law firm now in Fiji. It employs over 42 lawyers. We now have legal aid offices in every single urban center in Fiji, including in places like Nambuwalu, Tavyuni, going to Kandavu, going to Rotuma, all of these places. And it's very important because it should, it's not only the rich who should have access to justice. If you're a single mother, your spouse or whoever has abandoned you, need maintenance, you need somebody to be able to fight for your rights. If you're a low-income person, you've been charged with a criminal offense, you cannot afford a lawyer, you should be able to get representation. Just because you may not own many houses or be rich, you should have the ability to write a will. Many people, for example, they do not write a will and they die, you call it intestate, they die intestate. So you need the family members to be able to access that wealth through the legal way. That's the kind of services they provide. Social protection, we of course give social welfare payments. We pay money to people living below the poverty line, disabled people, pregnant rural women. We actually give them a food voucher because we believe that they should be able to eat properly so the children are not malnourished. Otherwise, of course, you can have babies that may not be nourished well when they are born, can cause other problems at birth. We of course give social protection now to people. We started off by people over the age of 70, we started giving them $30 a year. There are many Fijians today who may be farmers, who may be people catching fish, who may live in rural areas that have never joined FNPF. They lived off the land, lived off the sea. They've never been formally employed, but they're old now. So some of them, their children have abandoned them. and then looking after them, or they're poor, or some of the kids have migrated, they don't care about them anymore. You start giving them $30 a month or a modest sum. Those over the age of 70. Today they receive $50, and those people over the age of 66. We've been reducing the age for the past few years. Now, sorry, just going back, out of the spend, we spend 34% in these areas of our GDP, in those areas. Now, this is very important, ladies and gentlemen, expenditure mix. See, when government spends money every year, there are two types of expenses we have. One is what you call the operating expenditure. The other one is the capital expenditure. Operating expenditure is the money you spend to just run government on a daily basis. The Permanent Secretary and her team, we came from Suva yesterday. We stayed at the Waterfront Hotel. The cost incurred is the hotel bill, cost incurred is the fuel, cost incurred is the salary, and other expenses. The water we're giving out for free actually is not free, it costs us money. We actually had to buy that. That's operating expenses. Photocopying paper, whatever the case may be. That's your operating expenses, everyday needs to pay for everyday needs. Capital expenditure, which is over here, is things, the spending that you do to build things, asset building. So it's always good to have this higher. If you have a very high operating expenditure, in other words, you may not necessarily be controlling your everyday expenses. So by comparison, in 2004, out of all the money government spent in that year, 83% went into operating expenditure, only 17% went into capital expenditure. By comparison now, 60% goes into operating, 40% goes into capital expenditure. The example that I've been using with the high school students is this. I said, assuming we all go out and decide to have a party at McDonald's, and we don't have enough money though, so we go to the bank, let's say we go to ANZ, and we say to the manager at ANZ, look, we all want to have a party, can you please fund the party? So he said, yes, we'll give you the money. We all go off to McDonald's, we'll have a big party, we eat the burgers, drink the Coke and the Juicy or whatever it is. We no longer have Juicy, Fanta, you drink all of that. Next morning you wake up, you have the debt, but you got nothing to show for it. The food is gone. The drinks are gone. But if you went to the bank and you said, I want to borrow some money to put up a new school or a new house or bedroom to my house, even though the debt is there, you got something to show for it. After a while, you'll pay off the debt, you still have something to show for it. So as a government, we want to be able to spend a lot more of our money in capital expenditure, so we got something to show for it. We give your university $2.2 million, $2.3 million a year. We give USP $30 million a year. We give FNU $58 million a year because they're completely government funded. So, but at the same time, we are building roads, hospitals, bridges, and we've got something to show for it. It lasts for 20 years, 30 years, 80 years, 90 years. Next slide, please. Again, just to show the expenditure on roads, bridges, and jetties. 2004, the good old days of PWD, they received $55 million. I understand some people want PWD back again. $55 million. And then, of course, 2016-2017 is $527 million. It goes to show the level of investment being made in those areas. Water and energy, again, you can see a huge spike in water and energy. There's still a lot of people who are not connected to the Water Authority of Fiji reticulated water system. A lot of people who don't have access to electricity. We're extending the grid. A lot more people now have access to electricity. Before the government, so for example, if they had a bunch of homes up there on the hill, if you wanted to be connected to the grid, they would say to you, the cost of that is XYZ, you have to contribute 10%. And sometimes you may have, like in one area, 20 homes. And out of the 20 homes, 10 of the homes contribute, the other 10 don't. So the grid does not get extended, and that money sits with government. 2 years ago, we returned all the money, and we said, we'll be now doing it for you without you having to make any contribution. There's, of course, a long list of places that needs to be done, but that's part of the money. We also, ladies and gentlemen, if you earn less than $30,000 a year, you're entitled to electricity subsidy. The unit cost of electricity for for households is 34 cents a unit. If you earn less than $30,000 a year, we pay 17 cents for you directly to FEA. You pay only 17 cents a unit if you earn less than $30,000 a year per household. That's what we do. We try and subsidize directly to those people who need assistance. Before, the older way of thinking was, because we want people to have access to cheaper electricity, let's keep the rate uniform throughout Fiji. It should not work, because the rich guy also gets to pay lower cost. If somebody has a swimming pool and runs 5 air conditioners in his house, they need to pay the right rate. We should not be subsidizing for them. This is why you apply the right rate, and then we say that those people below a particular income level will subsidize it for you directly. That's better use of your resources. Funding for education, I've said quite a lot on this. You can see, $598 million goes into TELS and toppers. I'm sure you've got some issues with TELS and toppers. We've had a number of issues that has been raised about that. Some of them, of course, are administrative goof-ups, if I can say, that has not been managed well by TSLB, and we'll be addressing that, but please raise it with us. As I said, that this line here will probably go even higher and exceed probably, I suspect, about close to $650 million at the very least in the budget. Health, again, you can see we've increased the funding, but our major challenge with health is the recruitment of doctors and specialists. Also, we've had some issues with medicine. The issue about medicine is not that because there's no money to buy medicine, it's the issue of logistics and the supply chain. And we have had a lot of people who've let us down in that respect, in particular the civil servants who've been managing the procurement side. I was recently in India, where the Indian government has developed quite a few years ago a software system that can actually give you real-time data about the medicine that's available in all of the health facilities. So we went to a state called Rajasthan, and we went to Rajasthan, and at the click of a button in the warehouse, they could tell exactly every single health center, every single hospital, how much Panadol each health center had. Real-time data. So, for example, the example that I used with the FNU people was that, you may get an outbreak of diarrhea in Nandi. So all of you go rushing off to Nandi. You need diarrhea tablets or whatever you take. Now, because there's a huge demand for that, Nandi may actually run out of it, but Lautoka Hospital has it. Singatoga Hospital has it. All somebody has to do is monitor the drugs and say, hang on, the supply here is going down rapidly. Oh, by the way, we know there's an outbreak of diarrhea in Nandi. Let's move the drugs across from Lautoka and Singatoga. It's about logistics. It's about the supply chain. So we're going to access that software to be able to then monitor drugs a lot better, to be able to ensure that the drugs are actually in the right places at the right time. Now, this is what I mentioned. This is government's operating revenue all the way from there to there. That's operating expenditure. That's the savings we are making from operating from the expenditure itself. What that basically means, because our revenue, operating revenue, is more than our operating expenditure, we actually have a savings, which means we don't necessarily have to borrow as much as we would have to do if, for example, you had only that much of savings. So the savings is actually increasing. Government debt. A lot of people talk about government debt. This is very important to understand. This is what you call the nominal figures. These are the actual amounts of money itself. This is what you call the debt to GDP ratio. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the line you need to be concerned about. Now, what that means, GDP is basically the value of your goods and services that a country has, the value of it. Now, your debt is measured against the value of your GDP as a percentage of that. So, again, if I could give you a very simple example, assuming the value of our GDP of Fiji is $100, then we go out and borrow $20. So you would then say our debt to GDP ratio is 20%. Right? So we borrow $20, but our GDP is worth $100, so it's 20%. But assuming our value of our GDP increases to $500, we then go and decide to borrow $50. So $50 is 2.5 times more than of $20. But our debt to GDP ratio has in fact come down to only 10% because the value of your GDP is a lot higher. So if the value of your GDP increases, it gives you a lot better capacity to be able to borrow. So for us, it has been our policy to make sure that this line continuously keeps on going down. This line here has gone up because of Winston. We had to go out and get more money to build the real schools, to build the roads and the bridges and the jetties and the crossings that have been damaged, to help farmers rejuvenate their crops. So we're going to help the Dalo farmers, cassava farmers, the Yangona farmers, the sugarcane farmers. That obviously cost money. So the line to watch is this. Now I'm going to give you some comparisons of what's the debt to GDP ratio of other countries. Japan has a debt to GDP ratio of 239.2%. In other words, they're borrowing 239% more than what the actual value of the GDP is. USA is 107.4. By comparison, if you look at some comparable states, Maldives is 81.5, Seychelles is 68.6. That's in the Indian Ocean, all those two countries. Nauru, Mauritius. I was recently in Mauritius in January of this year. Mauritius GDP was a lot lower than ours a few years ago, back in the late 60s, 70s. But they made a strategic move, as we are doing now. They decided to position themselves as a very highly developed, very high and good quality infrastructure. They are just off the coast of Africa. Africa is a growing economy. So Mauritius is seen as a safe haven. They've invested a lot on their roads. Mauritius does not even actually have a river. So they build enormous dams to actually have water security. Now, they've invested heavily. They've invested very heavily in the IT area. So a lot of the African companies are setting up the IT centers in Mauritius to service Africa. So they've obviously decided to go off and borrow a lot more money, but they're obviously borrowing for the right reasons because they're investing in the areas that will give them more productive capacity and create more jobs. So that's why they've done that. Tuvalu, Samoa, of course. Australia is below us. You'd be surprised, we were surprised with the figures from Australia, given the fact that Australia had a large export market for mineral resources, but their debt is fairly high comparably in any case. And these are the other countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last slide here. Just by way of summary, economies to accelerate 3.6 in the near future. There are very favorable prospects for growth. We have a lot of private sector interest in the economy. A lot of private sector companies are investing. We're very, as I said, very prudent about the way that we manage our finances. We have sustainable debt position, high capital expenditure. We are continuously looking at broadening our base of our economy. We don't want to be dependent on just one or two things to continue to grow our economy. Because, for example, if we're only dependent on, say, tourism and sugarcane, if you have a cyclone that will take out the tourism properties and damage the sugarcane, we'll be in dire straits. In the same way, for example, at the moment, we have somewhat of a risky situation in our tourism sector. 51% of all the tourists that come to Fiji come from Australia. Another 15 or 16% come from New Zealand. So nearly 70% of our arrivals come from only two countries. 15% from North America. Now, if the economy of Australia and New Zealand does not do well, guess what? They won't be traveling as much. It'll have a huge impact on us. So this is why we want more Chinese, we want more Indians to come to Fiji to have a holiday. This is why the Fijian government is partnering with Fiji Airways on this marketing strategy to fly to Singapore so we can connect. We get more different sources of tourists from different countries. So if, for example, one economy does not do well and we only have 20% arrivals, we can depend on the other 80%. So this is what you call your risk mitigation. And that's what we are trying to do as a part of our strategy. Foreign reserves are doing very well, and inflation, of course, is set to stabilize to below 3% in the medium term. So that's my stint. Now we'll open up the floor. Please give your comments, your suggestions. Oh, okay, but I haven't finished yet. I haven't finished yet. Some of you may not want to comment now, or some of you may get food for thought afterwards. If you want to make submissions, please email it to this address. Please write it down. You may get some bright ideas. You may sit down together as a group tonight when you go to McDonald's to have your party. And you may have some ideas there, and you can send your submissions to this email address. Please do so by Friday of next week. You want to post it? I suggest don't post it. It may take too long. But if you're in Suva, you can hand deliver it at that address. So we'll open up the floor now. Please don't hesitate to ask any question. No question is too silly or too hard. I prefer the lecturers not to ask any questions. This is your time. We'd like you to ask questions, make suggestions.